Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Munson Steed, and I am the host of A Seat at the Table, where we work to discuss those things that mitigate our community, the Black community, from having access to the table, getting near. When you think of health disparities, you clearly have an understanding that people are not quite making it to the health table. These are also individual things that affect compliance inside organizations and how you're able to work, what discrimination looks like, what microaggression is, and how you define that. We need specialists, and here at the seat of the table, we are proud to understand that we have some of the most superior, I said superior, legal minds, and those who are trained to understand and to guide us as we move forward through this uprising to have and bring some of the most, what I would call, subject matter experts willing to discuss and come to the table and deal and share with us insights that we need to have. Congratulations and welcome to you, Andy Hinton. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you for having me.
No, it's our pleasure. Anytime we can have access at rolling out to a subject matter expert and provide our community access to someone who intellectually is qualified, someone who is professionally qualified, and is not just a pundit. I think our community is full of pundits, and it just seems that mainstream media is remiss on allowing individuals qualified to actually be pundits and represent our community. So I really appreciate you coming on. Why don't you kind of describe for our audience, if you would, just your background, some of your interests, and so that we can talk about a seat at the table and obviously discrimination, racism, and harassment in the workplace.
Sure. So I'm Andy. I am a lawyer. I'm originally from New York. I have, in my career, been a commercial litigator. I've been a federal prosecutor, and then most recently led compliance programs for large multinational corporations. First for a number of businesses at GE Capital, and then for the last 13 or so years at Google here in California. Married, my wife is also a lawyer, 2 kids. My daughter Sarah just graduated from the University of San Francisco, and my son Eric is about to enter 10th grade. So hopefully that catches us all up.
Well, we're all caught up, Andy, and I think you say it so matter-of-factly about your achievement in working in some of the best environments, superior brands, definitely top of class, where there's no shabby workers showing up because you're surrounded by people who are fairly intelligent and definitely qualified to be there. For us, you here as a member of the board on Not Me, when you think about the fact that you're there as an advisor, what vision do you have that they can help in making sure that it's not me?
Sure. I think that the one of the hardest things to do in terms of an enterprise, an organization, institutions' efforts to try and address misconduct is encourage people to raise concerns when they see them. It's simply impossible to guarantee that misconduct will not happen in an institution or an organization. It's going to happen. And the trick there is, how do you make sure that the organization has got an opportunity to address it, to respond to it? And that requires people to raise it. #NotMe is an incredibly powerful tool to reduce the friction that exists in folks raising concerns when they see misconduct. It's a mobile app. It's designed to be supportive of the folks who are raising concerns, as opposed to other solutions that are much more indexed toward supporting the organizations and institutions that have to respond to these concerns. Simple things that don't necessarily jump out at you as important, but through the research that we've done at Google and other places are incredibly important. Basically asking the complainant, what would they like to see happen here? How did the conduct make them feel? Those are important aspects of making somebody feel comfortable, raising concern, and feeling confident that you're going to respond to it in a fair and equitable way. And Not Me really has done a nice job around that.
That's big thinking, because that at least gives people an expectation,
Right.
that which is part of what I think the uprising is. Let's set some new expectations as to our reality. Obviously, a lot of corporations are making what I would consider public statements, writing checks. You know, people took to the streets after George Floyd. What do you think about their response, and what do you think we'll have to do to sustain this movement, including Not Me?
Sure. I'm all in favor of folks making new commitments, renewing old commitments to combat racism. I'm not gonna belittle that, and even more happy when they back those commitments up with their wallet. So certainly think that's fantastic. Uh, in terms of making it sustainable, I think, and actually genuine, authentic, I think you have to look at the nature of the commitments that are being made, and the nature of the people who are making those commitments. Are the folks who are making the commitments sincere and genuine in their desire to combat racism? And one of the ways I tend to measure that is whether the commitment itself is something that can be measurable, something that you can ultimately hold somebody accountable for. I'm not a big fan of commitments that are draped in hyperbole. They are far too susceptible to being spun and rationalized when the pendulum eventually swings back toward center. I like commitments that are measurable, and I think if they're measurable, then they support more sustainability, right? Because you can go back in a year and say XYZ Corporation said they're going to increase Black representation at this level of the corporation by 30%. Show me the numbers. And if you didn't, explain to me why and show me what you're going to do about that. You can't have that when commitments essentially are acts of hand waving. And I think the money that the organizations are spending is fantastic. I think if you target the right organizations that themselves have the right measurable, discrete commitments that can be looked at and they can be held accountable for, I think that supports sustainability.
Yeah, I like the measurement so that we can have some KPIs.
Exactly.
You know,
That's exactly right.
You know, I was having a conversation with the physician. We have a program, Health IQ, and I was telling the doctor was like, well, and I said, brother, you're being real, theoretical about health right now.
Yeah.
We need to kind of do it either weight. You need to have this weight, this body index, understand what it is. Here's a good blood pressure. Here's a bad blood pressure. Here are your calories, at least have some idea, and like I told him, if we every time read a label, we'll at least have an idea, but some kind of KPIs, because out of this pandemic, if we don't recognize that we have to put health KPIs on everything regarding health, we're going to miss again. So I think that talks to health disparity. What kind of cultural shift do you see that's likely to come out of all of these protests? And obviously the use of, Not Me.
Yep. So I like the fact that the horrific events that have led to the current protests have fueled a conversation and hopefully a reevaluation of the police force, right? Of what the mission purpose of the police force, what it should be. And this is not a knock against the police force. My primary concern is that we're simply asking the police to do too much, and that we need to think about and be much more specific in detail around the different tasks that we're faced with and what's the right tool for each job. And the answer is, I think, often going to not be an armed police officer. I've heard folks sort of understandably raise concerns around job displacement and such. I'm not sure that's ultimately going to be the issue, because I believe there are many opportunities out there for different types of careers for folks who might otherwise be part of the larger police force, careers that they might find far more fulfilling than what they're currently doing. I mean, the needs of our community are not going away. It's just that we may have the wrong tool to address a lot of them. So I'm hoping that conversation continues, and ultimately it does lead to a significant change in not just the police force and our community's relationship with police forces, but even more generally, law enforcement, criminal law enforcement, and what are the purposes of many of the laws that are out there, and whether today in 2020 we're still comfortable with why these laws that are some are hundreds of years old, why they exist and what they exist for.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. You think about a homeless. Let's see, you're on the street. Likely to have a gun? Probably not. Might be a little mental illness. Maybe you need a warm meal and a location, and you don't want to see any, a new type of resting place for people to, find balance. Because sometimes it's just no balance, whether it's you've been displaced and it's balance. It's funny. Someone over the 4th was just, we were in Chicago, and someone was obviously had very loud fireworks, and a dear friend of mine wanted to go and tell them, and I'm going to call the police on that. And I said, well, hold on. In all the things that we're doing, the reaction by everybody might be disproportionate, and we don't know because everybody's already on edge right now. But is that something that needs that, or is that a later community event intervention of some sort that just kind of like begins to educate? Because I think if there's anything that has been shown is, one, we need more organizers in our community, just health organizers, intervention organizers to kind of decide issues and who's gonna organize those issues that we find in the community. And I like even the use of the hashtag. It gives pause. So everybody can say, hey, what happened? And I it was amazing today. We had hopefully a future client, and we met with them. And I said, you haven't done business with us. You really haven't sent us an RFP. You have not sent us an RFI. Obviously the client asked me to call you. In terms of Black-owned media, there's so few of us that literally 2% of your budget, probably 0.000001 of a Google budget by all of us to the tune of $20 million. And they'll be like, and what? I mean, y'all been saying no for all this? That's why y'all been saying no? And I think so we get on the call, and it's a Zoom, and all 3 of my staff members show up. Their faces are there. All 8 of their faces are covered. And he talks about his broken camera. I'm like, your camera was broken before then. You could actually Zoom on your phone. So like, I'm really not checking for you now, because that was your excuse. Zoom is pretty simple. Click, and with your phone, I'm in front of you, and like, none of you are going to look at me, right? You're not going to look at me, and then you're going to give me this. I need to send you an RFI. When you ask me to send you a media kit, I'm not certain, and I would love to be able to say, okay, not me. Let's just send up the hashtag. Had a meeting, and it was just not good with this organization, and somebody needs to know that you've been tagged right now.
And I really think that the tool can be helpful in those kind of situations. I mean, it really is. Just 2 points. One, that kind of an interaction just shows how you can lose trust in a second.
Right.
I mean, something as simple as not having your camera on, undercut trust, and it can be almost irrecoverable. And two, when that happens, folks want to tell somebody, and if this is not a necessarily coming from a bad place, sometimes you want the organization to know, look, if this is what you intended, all right, then I want you to understand that. If it's not what you intended, you need to fix it and
Right.
give them an opportunity to fix it. But you need some way to do that you feel comfortable with, that you feel safe with, that you feel secure with. Not me can do that.
Yeah. No, so I really like that because it's an intervention without an altercation. How do we discuss this now? I've just called a foul on the play, not mad about it, still want to be in the game, want us to work together, but I see we're already got a little issue. And before I get an issue, my team was concerned. Their camera's on, our camera's on, their camera's off. Okay, he said his was broke. Now everybody in the cultures, if that company's is broke, okay, not likely. Not me today. So I get that. When you think about the culture shift of using hashtags to call a foul on the play, who in an organization do you see responding to that?
So I see different parts of the organization responding depending on the nature of the concern that comes up. Compliance, HR, ops, security. It really depends. And I tend to sort of think in terms of a normal employer-employee type situation. But I can imagine not me being used directly to support things like oversight of the police department.
Mm-hmm.
And where you would get the people who would follow up on those concerns would be independent, right, completely independent of the police department, and that's yet another layer that would build trust for people. You're reporting to a tool that is not the police, and the response, the investigation, if you will, is not the police. I think that there's a tremendous value there.
Yeah, I think the idea moves the conversation forward without everybody feeling like we are now going to court. It just says, hey, foul on the play, let's kind of have a discussion before it gets beyond what everybody can see, but at least now you know it.
Yep.
And it allows people to recognize that. What else should people and how else can people use this? Because it's interesting that we are now in real talk and real thought about this.
And by this, you mean the moment, or
right.
not? Oh,
not me in particular.
Oh, no, not me in particular. I mean, not me is an easy way to demonstrate to your stakeholders, your employees, the members of the organization, the students at your school, the folks in your community, that you really, really, really want them to raise concerns, and that you, in turn, want to make sure that the response to those concerns is fair and effective. One of the ways that Not Me supports that is it provides the organization, the people who are responding to these concerns, with feedback, evaluations, if you will, based on the perceptions of folks who have raised concerns. So in your scenario with the Zoom call, if you went to Not Me and you said, I'd like to raise a concern regarding a particular corporation, you would be able to see just how that corporation has done in terms of addressing concerns. That, I think, would help in terms of you're feeling comfortable, assuming they've done well, in raising the concern. If they haven't done well, then that's a forcing mechanism for the corporation to do better. Because either because they know it's the right thing, or just because of the natural competitive instincts of businesses and desire not to have bad press out there, they're not going to want a situation where the tool is showing that they are doing less than an adequate job responding to concerns.
So now we have a mothership to be able to manage the reputation to some degree,
Yes, exactly right.
which is even better because we need more notification of the behavior, and then hopefully some of it won't make the news. Not that you mind it in the media, but it by then getting it back is a real issue
Yeah.
for Amy Cooper's in the park, and she is moving. How could the other Cooper actually have used "not me" in that consideration? Because obviously she was calling the police.
Yeah, I mean, if the city were to deploy "not me" as a concern raising mechanism, then either one of those folks could have used it as a way to raise a concern regarding what happened in the park, and it would have in my mind diffused the situation significantly. All right, and that's and ultimately, I think to your excellent point, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for take a breath, perhaps let somebody else who's a little bit more objective mediate the situation, and let's come up with a resolution that we can all live with in terms of fairness and equity. Um, I mean, the having I look, I worked with law enforcement when I was a federal prosecutor. I know law enforcement does not. You're not doing law enforcement any favors calling them into situations like that, right? They understand that is not a situation that at best it's going to be a neutral, and at worst it's going to be a disaster.
Right.
So law enforcement would welcome, I think, something that allowed for and supported a more moderate response than engaging a police officer.
Well, it seems that even with HR professionals, that now they have a mechanism that is 24/7. You don't have to wait. You can call a foul. You don't have to say, well, I was waiting to talk to my supervisor. You can just call it.
Yeah.
That way, everybody can understand it. We understand the value of what this brings to our organization. So there's a lot more transparency in what you're providing in Not Me.
And facility. I mean, to your point with Zoom, not me's on your phone, right? You don't have to look for a helpline or send an email or find your corporation's code of conduct and the little spot at the very end that says raise a concern here. You can the same way you find Zoom, you find Not Me. And again, all that they seem like little things, but all those little things reduce the friction and make it more likely folks will raise concerns. And if you raise concerns and then you responsibly respond to them, that's a huge part of the battle of addressing misconduct.
Right. It also will allow people to kind of almost in unison hit the same button at the same time. Oh man, that was not good to be on the call. It's registering right now. It's social without being social about our conduct today, everybody.
Absolutely. I would say it is social. I mean, organizations can look at this and just by looking at rates of reporting, get a much better gauge on how significant people are perceiving certain incidents. And so if everybody is reporting on a particular incident as something that was suboptimal, well, that must have been heck of suboptimal, right? And that's something that you need to prioritize in terms of addressing. Not Me can help organizations to do that kind of prioritization, know where to focus their resources and time.
So when you are counseling corporations in this moment, because it's a new moment, how are you giving them insight on how to participate and put in the practices of a Not Me into their organization? Because how do they onboard something like that so that they and their teams understand the options they are now being empowered with?
So I mean, it is incredibly easy to onboard Not Me. First of all, the app is, you download it from the App Store. You can download it from Google Play. It's free
Right.
for folks to raise concerns. So it's super easy. In terms of organizations, institutions getting access to information, reports, data analytics that the Not Me team puts together, it's a completely frictionless process. And as I said earlier, especially at this moment,
Mhm.
when organizations are looking for ways to sort of tangibly demonstrate that they get it, that they understand that there are people out there that are hurting and they want to know about it and they want to do something about it. Not me. It's right there. It's teed up for you to show that, for you to show that we care. Right? Yeah, not me, not you. Yeah.
Right. Well, we want to thank you for coming on the seat on the table. It is a phenomenal tool. I look forward to you coming back. I would love to hear your insight and really find some best practices the next time we speak to kind of talk about how it's evolving over the next 30, 60 days to kind of figure out what best practices we can share with our audience, because I will definitely be downloading that app and taking a look and seeing if my client's on there. I'd really like to give them some feedback. And I love the term you used about trust, because I think that is you say you want to change, but I can't tell.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much. I would love to come back and talk more about the product. Be
Uh,
well.
we will. You be safe out there because it is critical, Brother Hinton. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, and insight at a seat at the table. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Peace. Well, you got to hear there is definitely equality being positioned in technology. Not Me is an example of the future that we can look forward to, where there is some equality coming forward in the world of technology for all of us. Consider it, go out and definitely try and see how it fits. Look at adding more tools to your own playbook that will demonstrate and share so that we're not offended and that we can register at least a foul on the play. This is Munson Steed, and I'm closing it out for a seat at the table and rolling out. Good evening.